Hey there, I hope you're doing well. Um, so it's going to look a little bit different today than it has in the past. So I want you to be able to find the pause button on either your computer or the phone, whatever device you're using. Because throughout this book that I'm going to read to you, I want you to be able to pause it and I'm going to give you some questions to think about. And I want you to either think out loud, maybe if mom or dad are with you or your brother or sister, or just think in your head. But I just want you to have some time to stop and to think about the questions I'm asking. So know where the pause button is on the device that you're using, okay? So I'm going to be reading to you this book. This is one of my favorites. This is from the country of Turkey. Okay, Turkey is in the Middle East, and this book is called The Hungry Coat, and it's by the author Demi. Okay, and you'll notice that the gentleman on the front, his name is Nasreddin Hoca. He's the main character in this book. He's riding on a donkey. You'll notice that he's dressed a little bit different than how we would typically dress in the United States. He's wearing a turban on his head. He's got a long white beard, and just notice his long coat there. Okay, so that's a big part of the story. And so what I want you to be thinking about, the first question I want you to be thinking about is, what is more important? Okay, is it more important about what a person is wearing, what they look like, or is the person themselves more important, or their heart more important? Okay, so just to be thinking about. And then, have you ever felt like people have treated you differently based on, what you're wearing or what you look like? Okay, so that's kind of the big message that's in this story. Okay, so I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to get the camera set up here. This is called The Hungry Coat. And I want you to even now be thinking about that title, The Hungry Coat. Like, why on earth would a coat be hungry? And what is this all about? Okay, so I want you to be thinking about that. All right, here we go. So once upon a time in Turkey, there lived a funny little wise man named Nasreddin Hoca. He wore a huge white turban and a worn-out coat made of patches upon patches. Riding about on his little gray donkey, he liked to help whomever he could. So I want you to pause and I want you to think about this question. What information do we know just from this first page about Nasreddin Hoca? Okay. So first of all, we know that he's very helpful, right? We even see him passing out apples to the little children. We know that what the things that he wears, are old, and it's got a lot of holes in it. That's why it has patches in it. So maybe he doesn't have a lot of money, or maybe he just doesn't care too much about what he looks like. Okay. So one day, Nasreddin Hoca heard a great commotion inside a caravansary. That's a hostel or like a hotel for travelers. A frisky goat had gotten loose inside the kitchen. Kicking and prancing about, she was breaking all the dishes and knocking over pots and pans and spilling all the cooking oil. The cook was screaming, and a few travelers were slipping in the oil as they tried to catch the goat. So we see Nasreddin Hoca right here. Think about the information that we know about him already. What do you think that he might do? Go ahead and pause and think about what do you think he might do next based on what we know about him. Well, one thing we know is that he's very helpful, right? We see this big problem happening inside, so somehow or another, I'm guessing he's probably going to be helping in some way. Is that what you were thinking? Because he loved goats so much, Nasreddin always carried a sweet apple in his pocket for them. He quickly took out the apple and cut it into little pieces. He lined up the little pieces so as the goat nibbled to the very last piece, Nasreddin would be able to catch her. Gently, Nasreddin put the little goat back into her pen, and everyone cheered. The caravanserai owner invited Nasreddin to eat with the other travelers, but Nasreddin declined. He said no, because he was on his way to a banquet at the home of a rich friend. Now, what a banquet is like a large feast. You would have lots of people gathered together eating food, kind of like think about it like a big Thanksgiving dinner meal or what you might do at Christmas time. Okay. So, what other information do we know about Nasreddin Hoca from this? We know that he's got lots of friends, right? Why does he have lots of friends? Well, what did we learn about him? He's very helpful, he's friendly. So Nasreddin, he trotted off, waving to all and happy to have helped. He was so late now that he realized he would not have time to change his coat, which was not only worn out with patches upon patches, but now it was oily, dirty, and smelling of a goat. So what could be the problem here? Think about it. Think about where he's going. Think about what he's wearing. What could be the problem? He's going to the banquet of a rich friend, and he's wearing this old, smelly coat. When Nasreddin's friend opened the door to Nasreddin, he was shocked. He was afraid that his other guests would laugh at him for being friends with such a shabby, smelly man. So this rich friend is feeling kind of embarrassed about even having Nasreddin in his home, because what are the other people going to be thinking about him when he's invited this man that's smelling and has got this old worn out coat? So he's really thinking a lot about himself, isn't he? I wonder what's going to happen. Nasreddin simply jumped off his donkey, hugged his friend, and joined the banquet. He was so happy to be among friends that for a while, he didn't even notice something very strange was happening. Look at the picture. What strange thing is happening? Nasreddin just comes in. He's so excited. He's got his arms up above his head. He's so excited to be at this banquet, and look what the others are doing. They're holding their pinching their noses, not even looking towards him. No one was even facing him. All the guests had turned their backs towards Nasreddin, and when the servants brought dinner into the room, the food was served to everyone but him. Pause and think about, what are you thinking about the guests right now, the people at the banquet, and how they're treating Nasreddin? Before long, Nasreddin was left sitting all alone, if you can see him all the way over here, with nothing at all to eat. Several times he tried to start a conversation by yelling to a guest at the opposite side of the room, but no one even listened and no one responded. Think about how you would feel if you were Nasreddin right now and everybody's just ignoring you. And why are they ignoring him? Based on just the way he looks, just what he's wearing? Nasreddin looked thoughtfully at his friends. Each man was scrubbed until he glistened. I mean, they were very clean. Each one was wearing his very best coat. Then Nasreddin looked down at his own coat, worn out with patches upon patches, oily, dirty, and smelling of a goat. Now Nasreddin is starting to put things together of why the guests are ignoring him. It's because of his coat, isn't it? Very quietly, Nasreddin slipped out the door. He mounted his little donkey and began trotting home when he had an idea. What do you think his idea is going to be? At home, Nasreddin jumped into a tub of hot water. He poured in a whole jar of perfumed soap crystals, and he scrubbed himself until he glistened, and the whole room was filled with bubbles. And it's hard to see, but he's got a big smile on his face. Nasreddin dried and powdered himself. Then he put on his new shoes with his tasseled toes, a magnificent new turban with sparkling jewels, and a fine new coat of shining silk and golden thread. Look at that beautiful coat and the nice shoes. I wonder how he's feeling about himself now. What do you think? Nasreddin preened himself before the mirror. It means he was like checking himself out in the mirror, kind of holding his head up high, thinking very proudly of himself. He had never been so completely well dressed. Never had anyone worn a coat like this one. How fine he looked. What do you think he's going to do next? Oh, were you right? Nasreddin strutted out of his house. Everyone nodded respectfully as he swaggered along the street. Meant he was walking with his head up high because he's feeling really good about himself. And he's heading back to his rich friend's home. A servant ushered Nasreddin into the banquet hall, and his smiling host immediately served him food and drink. Wait a second, think about how they treated him before. Now look at him. They're treating him much differently now. What a fine figure he made. What a fine coat. Nasreddin was the most popular man at the banquet. But now, was he the most popular man before? Has anything changed about Nasreddin right now? Or has he only changed his clothes? Nothing has changed about him, right? He's only changed his clothes. Now, something really funny begins to happen. Nasreddin picked up the choicest grilled lamb chop, but instead of putting it in his mouth, Nasreddin put it inside his coat. Eat, coat, eat, said Nasreddin. Nasreddin picked up fish fried in vine leaves and roasted eggplant. Opening his coat, he said, Eat, coat, eat. What in the world is he doing? Any thoughts? Nasreddin scooped up pilaf, raisins, and pistachio nuts. Opening his coat, he said, Eat, coat, eat. Boiled squash stuffed with hash and olives went into his coat. Eat, coat, eat. Slices of chicken breast stewed in rose water, sugar cakes, flavored jelly, sherbet, sticky baklava, pomegranates, persimmons, oranges, apples, figs, and dates. All of this food Nasreddin stuffed into his bulging coat, shouting, Eat, coat, eat. Finally, Nasreddin opened his coat once more and poured a whole bottle of wine inside. Then, closing his coat as best as he could, he patted his belly and smiled at the host. What is he up to? All the guests were amazed. What was Nasreddin doing? At last, the alarmed host said, Tell me, my old friend, why are you feeding your coat? Look at his coat. It's bulging out. He's so shocked. Surely you wanted my coat to eat, Nasreddin replied. When I first came here in my old coat that had patches upon patches and it was oily and smelling, you guys had no food for me at all. Yet when I came back in this new coat, there was every kind of food for me. This shows me that it was the coat and not me that you invited to your party, right? Because the only thing that had changed about Nasreddin was his coat. It wasn't him. He's still the same person. Remember this, my friends, said Nasreddin Hoca. If you want to look deeply at the man and not at his coat, you can change the coat, but you cannot change the man. A coat may be fine, but a coat does not make a man. Outside, a man may be wearing sheepskin, but inside he might have the heart of a wolf. Means like a really good heart. Many a good man may be found under a shabby coat. With coats, new are the best, but with friends, old are the best. Everyone cheered. The wisdom of Nasreddin Hoca calls for celebration, exclaimed the host. Music and fireworks resounded, and everyone danced under the stars of heaven. And it says, he who wears heaven in his heart is always well dressed. So, friends, what's the big message that the author is wanting us to learn from this story, right? That it's more important about who we are as people and what our hearts are like inside, much more important than what we wear or what we look like on the outside. So I hope you enjoyed this wonderful story, The Hungry Coat by Demi.